one of the things I wanted to ask you, Howard, is like, I think for me, yes, I want to think about how we have conversations with people to try to come to that form of understanding. But I think one of the things for me that I'm struggling with right now is that I hate these people. I do. This is where I'm at, especially with, people close to me that are doing this, people close to me that are wishing physical harm on me for the crime of wearing my MAGA mask in public. I am starting to have such contempt for these people that I don't know if I personally am in a headspace where I want to even have those conversations. And that's a change for me because I've always been about just adult dialogue and rational conversations and agreeing to disagree. But something has shifted in me in the last couple weeks. And maybe it's because I'm busy and I've just been doing these walkaway rallies every weekend and I just don't really have a whole lot of time to myself at this point. But I feel such utter contempt for these people that I feel I am afraid that I am actually starting to dehumanize them. And so I guess I'm asking for your thoughts on how can I bring myself back to get in that place to have this conversation.
All right, let me ask you a question, okay? Because they probably have contempt for you now.
Oh, I'm sure they have for a while.
but here's the thing. Do you think that they're considering whether their contempt shouldn't cause them to dehumanize you? Do you think they're thinking? No. I don't either. So the difference, there's nothing wrong with the contempt that you have for them because they're doing things that are contemptible. And I use the term contempt when we're talking about Ted Wheeler, but I said intellectual contempt. Mm-hmm. And I try to distance myself with the word intellectual so that that was my way of saying I'm sure he's a human being. And, I'm very curious how he got to his place where I think is just utterly problematic for himself as well as he's a public official. So I'm not afraid of the word contempt because it's an honest feeling. And you can make a case pretty well that it's a deserved feeling. If people are acting contemptible, mm-hmm. It would follow that you would have contempt for them. But the thing you did was, I don't want to get to the place where I dehumanize them. And I'm worried about that. Well, it's good on you that you're worried about it because they're not. They had the people who reached that point where they could commit the kind of violence. I'm talking like Antifa type people. It's sociopathic. Sociopathic means that they're incapable of seeing somebody as a human being. That's why, with violence, you take a gun out and you shoot a person, and all you did was shoot a body, but you didn't shoot, a father, a son, a brother. You don't think a husband. You don't think of them as a person, and this is exactly why the political problem has gotten so out of line, is because of the dehumanization that's happened. So the trick will be, can I hold righteous contempt, but still hold out that these people are humans? And it's a good struggle that you find yourself in. Mm-hmm. The moment that you don't care anymore that they're human and therefore you dehumanize them, then you become them. You know how they say that old thing is that you become what you hate?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's where there'll be no difference between you and them. Mm-hmm.
And well, no, I mean, it made me think of, I used to, I guess I still could when I'm allowed to do training again, but I used to do this exercise when I did my mindfulness training in organizations where, it was to help people kind of wrap their heads around their difficult coworkers, like the most difficult people that they worked with, to try to create better relationships and work with them better. And what I would do is I would put a picture of a woman, like literally in an insane asylum where she looked crazy and she was in a straitjacket. And I would say, if you were talking to this person, how would you speak to them? How would you approach them? Well, you're not going to be aggressive with this person. You're not going to take any insults this person hurls at you seriously. You might approach this person because they're obviously a crazy person that's in great pain right in front of you. You're going to approach this person with maybe a little bit more empathy, maybe a little softer of an approach, maybe a little bit more understanding that they're not in a good place. And if you can imagine that your really difficult coworkers are that person, then that can change the way that you work with them. And very literally they are, because when a person is angry like every single day, and I think this applies to the work environment, I also think this applies to a greater extreme with people like Antifa, when people are constantly living in that angry place all day, every day, and all they do is just look for ways to feed that anger, they are very literally that broken person that you're seeing in that picture. They may not look at it on the outside, but they are that person. And if you can see them that way, that can change the way you work with them.
It's a really good exercise. But so let me tell you how by doing the exercise, it does something that's potentially insulting, though. Okay. Yeah, no, it's a good exercise. Don't take that away. The exercise is good. Because this person's in a straitjacket and they don't know any better. And
it's so an extreme version of reality.
Well, I got it. But I'm using the value of this exercise. So now let's take that to somebody who ardently is really extremely against you politically in the derangement arena. Okay. One of the things I've been self-conscious of is while the essence of what I am working with, I can label as they're deranged, so they don't know any better, is also a huge insult. Think about it, right? I mean, you have to say, yeah, I'm gonna treat you with kid gloves because you're too deranged and you don't know it. Now, I pointed out where the term came from. Charles Krauthammer came up with it when he was referring to W. Bush, and he was brilliant in adding this part. He said that derangement is these extreme ways of thinking by otherwise normal people. Okay, so instead of saying they're just not normal people and they're psychologically gone and unhinged in all of their mental capacities, what he identified was these people were normal, but even though they were normal, they had this element of them that was a barrier to other good sensibilities. Okay, if you're deranged, the claim is being made is that you've got a flaw in your sensibilities. Last time you asked me something to the, about Trump, if you thought these bad things about him. And I said to you, you could think those bad things about him without being deranged. It didn't take derangement to say, well, I don't like this, I don't like this, I don't like this. But if you are deranged, then it clouds that. Are you saying those bad things because it's coming from the derangement? So this is why there's a stake in people who are deranged to not be deranged. So they could actually say the things will have credibility that it otherwise wouldn't have. So we've got a problem here. If I talk to people and they say all kinds of things they don't like about Trump, and I just knee-jerk react and say they're deranged, I've now ruined my argument about the existence of derangement, right? Because I don't want to be dismissed for ideas I have. What if they just say, well, you're just cracked. I have a derangement on my side. Well, if you have one deranged talking to another deranged, you could just cancel each other by just saying they're all deranged.
Yeah.
So the challenge is, if you identify somebody that meets a criteria that they're deranged, they're not going to accept that. They're not going to accept that they have some mental crack in them that makes them willfully blind to the kinds of things you're trying to get them to see. So the exercise you talked about is still useful, so that it doesn't matter whether they're deranged or whether they're not deranged. What you do is, there's an issue and you don't agree with their issue. You don't say to them, I don't agree with your issue. What you say is, I need to know more about what you said, because I can't put the pieces together. Can you help me do that? And hopefully they say, sounds great. Here's why I think what I think. And then you go down that road with them, so that even if they are deranged, they will be identifying either things that back up what they're saying or don't. And I cannot tell you how many times I've talked to somebody who demonstrated all the characteristics of derangement, but I asked a few critical questions and they said, actually, you're right. That doesn't count all the time, whatever point they're trying to make. It doesn't always operate that way, which opens up to say, well, could you be wrong about Trump's motivation? And the deranged person, or the otherwise deranged person, says, yeah, I could be wrong. And then I say, so on principles, he might have some good ideas, you just don't like them. And they go, yeah, can't stand them. Do you see where we went?
Yeah. No, I think that makes a ton of sense. And I think this is worth putting maybe like a fine point on, because one of the things that really drives me crazy about people on the right is how dismissive they are sometimes of people on the left and their ability to change and to look at reason and to start to see things in a new way. You know, oftentimes I've seen so many instances, and this is especially true on Twitter, and Twitter is not real life, and we need to acknowledge that. But this is just, where I see it happening an awful lot, where, I'll bring up someone that clearly has Trump Derangement Syndrome, and I can identify with that because I had it. I completely understand that experience of it. And to say to someone on the right, well, can we just try to have a conversation with this person? Can we try to, have a dialogue? And they're like, no, they're never going to change. They're never going to see things my way anyway. And so they're kind of doing the same thing to them that the person with derangement is doing to Trump, right?
Yes, this is the tricky thing. When I first identified what was going a long time ago, before anyone was talking about this, I was aware of the dynamics. And I immediately said, how can you address the issue without being dismissive and having it turned on you that you're canceling them because you're calling them deranged? It's a very serious problem. Or it's a very serious challenge. And I'm making a case. You see, this is what I'm assuming. I'm sorry to go off point a little bit, okay?
No, it's okay.
I'm really impressed with your followers. It took a little time, but I went through comments made on our various presentations. And you know how it is. I mean, you got a public out there that's looking at that, and you don't know who's going to say about what, know, and there's crazy stuff. And so without knowing, the quality of commentary that would come out, thinking it could be something like Twitter, where anything and everything gets said in the most crazy ways, horribly, that can be said. Guess what? Your group is really sophisticated, very sharp.
You hear that, guys? Okay.
Yeah. And I'm not blowing smoke. Okay, in fact, I hesitate to even say this because I'm not trying to ingratiate anybody. Okay, but I went through it in very good detail, and these are really sharp, smart people. Okay, yes. As a group. Okay, and you've got a lot of them. Now, are there crackpots in your group? Of course.
Oh, yeah.
There's no way. You know who you are, you crackpots. But
maybe they don't know who they are.
Think of the numbers. Well, it's an interesting subject, the crackpot issue. But the point is, you should be very impressed. It's one thing to get followers, and there's going to be people who follow you because they don't like you. That's exactly why they're following you. But you've got the ones that are following you because you bring something to the table. Okay, We're living in interesting times. You know, the curse is being played out in front of us, and we can actually do something. You have enough people who can do this. So this is what I'm getting at. So what I want them to do is to consider that when they do have discussions with people, as much as they're able to, if they want to go there with anybody, do it one-on-one. Those are your best chances if you're wanting to have discussions. Once you get a third person in there, it dilutes and it distracts the direction of where you're going. So that's rule one, is discussions should be one-on-one. Okay? They're better that way. Rule two, don't debate anybody. What you want to do is you want to ask questions on the premise that you missed something. You know, you've got strong ideas, you've researched it, you understand what the values set is, you understand the moralities, you understand the practicalities. You're very good in your opinion, okay? But when you talk to somebody that's got a different perspective, come at it not like you want to win them over to your point. Come at it like you missed something. Can they fill in the gaps? Mm-hmm. Does that make sense? Just on that alone, is it obvious where that could go? Or
I think it could be. I think where people get confused, and I say this because I've actually taught this technique in coaching classes for like managers and organizations to kind of do the same thing when they're trying to get their employees to do something a certain way. And I say the same thing, you know, ask them questions, make sure you're exploring their thought process, make sure you understand it. I think what trips people up sometimes is, I think that this is not a skill that most people have.
No. I want to underscore something. I do a lot of conflict resolution, mm-hmm. and in whether it's corporate or whether it's marital or you name it. Okay. And what I lay out right in the beginning is I'm going to teach you something that maybe 2% of the world's population actually do. In other words, it's not a skill set that's natural. This is a very unnatural skill set. When somebody says something that is either you disagree with, or you're offended with, or you want to correct, or you want to, it's what I refer to as the undesired message. When you get an undesired message that drops in your lap, what you want to do is you want to attack it, you want to fight it, you want to correct it. You want to push the unwanted, undesired message away. What I teach is the opposite of human nature. You want to invite the message. You want to bring it in. And the way you bring the message in is through questions motivated by genuine curiosity. That means that you don't ask a question that's snarky, like, well, when did you come up with that idea? You ask it like saying, I didn't know that. When did you first think about that? Okay. Mm-hmm. I'm actually curious about those crazy things that I'm hearing, those things that I disagree with. 2%, maybe 2% of the world's population do that. So this is a skill set. Now, taking your followers who are clearly in a class of insightfulness, imagine if they crafted that skill set. From now on, instead of when they hear something they don't like, instead of pushing against it, they say, didn't know about that. Can you tell me more about it? Can you tell me how that works? Are there any weaknesses in your ideas? In other words, there's ways, whatever you might want to say to somebody that is a proactive thing could be asked, it could be made a question. Everything you want to say could be made into a question. Mm-hmm. And you make more of a connection. See, that's the other thing too. I'm sorry. Kind of excuse me. Your goal is not to change anybody's mind. Your goal is to understand. Mm-hmm. That's what communication is all about. Imagine if you're talking with someone, how are they apt to feel about you if they believe more that you're trying to understand them than you are trying to convince them?
Yeah.
Do they feel more positive regard for you if they feel like you're trying to get them to understand, that you're trying to understand them? or that you're trying to persuade them. So this is an appeal to your listeners to to know what your goal is when you communicate with someone. Your goal is to understand them and to convey that you're trying to understand them because you want to understand them, not to convert them.
Yeah. And I want to just build on that for a second, because people sometimes tell me, because I've said that well, not exactly, but mostly that exact thing to so many people before, and they say, well, Carlin, that just means that they think that I'm going to say that they're right or something like that, and so they have a hard time wrapping their heads around this idea of not trying to convince them. But I want to say this too. There's a very famous management book out there called Five Dysfunctions of a Team. It's by Patrick Lencioni. Anyone who works in any office environment should absolutely read this book. It's a fantastic book. And he talks about getting buy-in in that book. And I think that this is a lesson that can be applied to this as well, because he talks about the fact that in order to get someone else to buy into your idea or your way of thinking or what have you, they don't necessarily need to agree with you. They don't need to agree with what you want to do, but what they do need is to have feel that you have given them the opportunity to be heard, understood, and considered within the context of the discussion. And it's about having that, like giving them that opportunity to feel heard. I think people dramatically underestimate how few people feel like they are genuinely heard by the people they're conversing with on like the average day to day.
Absolutely. This is absolutely key. I don't know if I forget the things we've gone over, but the reason why anybody seeks the help of a psychotherapist or counselor or someone to help them with things, the reason is they feel alienated. They feel on their own by themselves and nobody understands. Imagine if communication makes them feel less alienated. I'm not alone. I have a person who's not agreeing with me, but they care about what I say. That's what the goal is. And so, which plays back to the motivations of people committing violence on the streets. These are people who are alienated, and the only way they can get any connection is to pick up some object and throw it through a window and have a crowd say, right on. In the moment, it's like, and what it is, it's like a cocaine rush. In the moment, they feel, wow, I'm someone important. I'm someone that people like. I'm someone that people care about. And what did it take? It took an act of destruction to, which is, and it's pretty profound. And it says, and it reinforces that they are an important person. This violent act makes me important. And so the reason for the violent act, that is in terms of the stated reason, which is nonsense, like for whatever the public policy that you want to do or to end racism or something, that's not what's motivating them. What's motivating them is they're trying to not feel alienated.
I think what you just said is really profound, actually. So, I mean, this is about... Well, I mean, it's profound, but it terrifies me at the same time, Howard, because when we live in, it's like this quandary, right? If we live in this era where we have these two sides that are constantly doing this, neither is listening to the other, neither is seeking to understand the other, and both, frankly, I think are acting from a place of alienation and are just unwilling to budge.
Yes.
How do we fix this? I don't even know. I think you freaked me out even
more. So here's the thing. I'm really excited what you just said. Okay. So you use the word profound, which is a profound word. Okay. That means you get it. You connected with what I was sharing with you. You know it in your own work. So I wasn't telling you anything you don't know. I'm not telling you anything that your followers and your listeners don't know. They all know this. Okay. And then I said, only 2% of the world's population do it. If that, right? So that's pretty serious stuff, because if this is what it takes to make this all work better, and we aren't doing it, and there doesn't seem to be anything on the horizon that's making us do it, well, Do you recall the times we've had these broadcasts? I've always made a big deal about what you're doing as important. You got a lot of people. I think that you're going to surpass 100,000 very soon. I know that I know that you're doing this is coming from a place that we don't have to have the bad stuff that we're having. You know, and you never even signed up for this.
No.
No, you were going in a completely other thing that you're doing, and then it bit you, and it bit you hard. And you rose to the occasion, and you used your forum to reach out and say, there's something going on here. I don't know what it is, you know, or I do, or maybe you got an idea, but there's something going on here. And we have two ways of going with this. We could either complain about it, we can give it names, and we can have contempt for it, and we can stand in our righteous intellectual place, right? Because it's very righteous and it's very intellectual. And we can just say, we know things and you should know them too. But we ought to go farther than that. We ought to go, we think we know what we've got here. I do, I've got experience with it, you have it. Yeah. We have a forum here where people are listening. You're going to rallies. You know, those rallies are all about what we're talking about.
Yeah.
They're peaceful rallies, by the way.
They are. We have not had violence at one of them.
And not one of them. So it's obviously possible to bring a lot of people together without screaming at each other. Okay? And it needs to be highlighted. This isn't getting enough play in the media. CNN, that's right. They're part of the problem. But you're sort of you're off Broadway. You're not Broadway, aren't you?
Oh, say that again. Sorry, you broke up for 1 second there.
Oh, yeah. I said you're off Broadway. You're not Broadway. You're off Broadway.
Yeah, I would say that.
You have a following. You have an interested following. It has a groundswell. It's so important. And so this is more than just an intellectual exercise. So imagine the forum is listening to this and saying, you know, this is making a lot of sense. I don't have to just complain about it. That person that I want to have a discussion with, I'll do it one-on-one, and I'm not going to try to convince them of anything. I'm just going to be curious. And by the way, this is no guarantee that there'll be a happy ending. That's the other thing. We have to be realistic about it. But there can be more happy endings this way. There's the promise of more happy endings this way than not. And so maybe there's something inspirational here